All right. Hi, everybody. Looks like we've got some people starting to come in here. I see some friendly faces out there. We are going to give everybody until about 1:05 to file in. And through this list here, not playing favorites by any means, but I see former client Robert Williamson. Nice to see you, Robert. Scott, I've got an email from you in my inbox. I'm going to get right back to you here after we get this webinar done today. Great to see a lot of clients from Realtek on the webinar today. Appreciate having you guys here. Still got a few folks coming in, so we'll kind of let it roll. Hey, Amy. Thank you for attending. You were one of our top webinar attendees and a one-time appearance as well. So shouts out to Amy. All right, let's see here. I tell you what, looks like we've kind of stabilized on the attendance number here. People have kind of quit dropping in. So we're going to go ahead and start just a couple minutes early and get rolling. For those of you who don't, thanks everyone for joining. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Britt Benson-Greer. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Realtek. As a former marketing manager, I still get really excited about analyzing data and trying to find takeaways that can, influence our strategy, make marketing better, make websites better, make performance overall better. I am joined here today by Amber Martin, one of our really great client marketing managers.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you all.
And we're both really excited that you've taken some time out of your day to join. I know it is a busy time. Every week seems to be a busy time these days. So thanks for taking some time out of your day to join. Hopefully we give you some great insights that you can take back home into your businesses and get something out of. Just before we get started, a quick housekeeping item. I think Mia just acknowledged this in the chat, but we are going to hold questions till the end, but feel free to add any questions you have along the way into the chat or things you're just thinking about. If you want to talk, we should have a few minutes so we can kind of discuss, but we'll answer those at the end. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of get us rolling here. For those of you who did not attend our first Real Insights, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at some key trends and data points that are shaping the digital environment for vacation rental managers. We're pulling all the data from these charts from our aggregated website data sets, and we're going to be looking to provide real insights in two major components of your business's web presence. We're going to start with web demand trends. What are potential guests searching for on the site in the search results page, filtering, length of stay, things like that. When are they looking to stay? What months are those dates falling in? We're going to look at how much managers are charging for stay dates. What's the ADR kind of throughout the calendar in different markets? And then lastly, we're going to look at some ways that those insights can inform your strategy so you can make the most out of the rest of your year. After that, we're going to look at marketing benchmarks. How are different marketing channels performing versus historical data? Where are they trending? What's that going to tell us about the state of the market? And then we'll also look at some solutions and marketing strategies that you can employ to kind of counteract that slowdown. And again, just make the most out of your year. Knowledge is power, right? I'm going to hand it over to Amber to kind of get us started on some of this data here.
Awesome. Well, to kick everything off, let's start with an industry overview. On this slide, you'll see a quick look at how Q3 is pacing across all of our destinations. As you can see here, our median length of stay for July is 11 nights with a median nightly rate of $415. In August, stays averaging about 10 nights with rates dropping to $390. By September, rates dipped to $341 as demand tends to soften. You'll notice I'm calling out the median here, and this is intentional. Although throughout the presentation, we will talk about different data sets, we'll use the median as our benchmark because it's such a useful way Oh, Britt, I think our slides are running.
I'm pulling them up now. My apologies,
Okay,
everybody.
there we are. Sorry about that. But as you'll notice, we will, throughout the presentation, use the median as our benchmark because it's such a useful way to understand what's typical in the market and help us spot trends and opportunities. Now let's break things a little bit further by destination to get a clear view of what's happening in the lake, beach, and mountain markets and how we can capitalize on those trends.
All right, so here in this first page, we're going to be looking at beach market specifically, and we're going to be taking a look at length of stay and then booking windows. Um, Everything we're looking at here is the last 6 months of search data, and we're going to show what amount of searches occurred for each month, and then kind of how that length of stay fluctuates along this line here. So you're going to see that in July, this month here, we got about 20% of recent search demand. Makes a lot of sense to me. We're certainly in peak for the beach market. As we look out to the future, August has about 12.5% of the recent searches, and then that trends down just a little bit into September and October with about 9% respectively for each of those. And then it's going to sink just a little bit down for November as we get a little bit of a slump there with about 7% of recent searches. The length of stay for these dates, you'll see is hovering around 10 or 11 for most of the shoulder season. And then going into November, it shoots up a little bit to 14 dates and then progressively up higher into that like month-long stay for a snowbird towards the end of the year. One really interesting thing that I noticed in looking at this data is that there's really a relevant amount of searches for spring 2026 already. One thing that I would keep in mind is just being aware of spring break dates in your surrounding counties and rolling out some marketing, say like past guest email campaigns in the fall to generate some early bookings. The kids are about to be back in school. We're going to have that calendar. No one kids are going on spring break, and it gives you an opportunity to maybe use a bit slightly higher ADR that you have set right now, which we'll look at in just a second, to set you up to run some discounts, attract early bookers, incentivize getting into their favorite vacation home. So I'm going to pass it over to Amber to look into some of those rates for the beach market.
Awesome, thanks, Britt. Our nightly rate chart is showing us a dip as we head into our shoulder season. As you can see here, August has a median of 415 per night, September dipping slightly to 366, and October starting that upward trend to $391 per night, and November trending up even further at 426 as we head into the holidays. Now we've broken this down even further to show something interesting that we noticed while looking through the data. When we compare our July and September rates for studio 1 and 2 bedroom units, you can see a clear softening, with vacation rentals dropping $40 per night from $260 to $222, and condos we see an even steeper drop of $80 per night from $217 down to $137. And October actually dips even further to $130. According to Backlinko, about 36 million Americans are working at least partially remote in 2025. If I were a manager, I'd be investing in the marketing to the shoulder season just to singles and couples looking to work remotely from the beach. To target these travelers, you could review past reservations during the same time period and target those guests in email campaigns, or even run paid search campaigns with demographic targeting by age and location, featuring copy about working remotely from the beach. Cute things like work remotely with an ocean view, or your office can wait, escape to the beach this fall.
Good stuff there, Amber. So now we're going to move over to the booking rates for the beach. We're looking at the impressions for bookings for different bedroom counts specifically. And you'll see we've broken this out into two different date windows to show how that demand kind of shifts over time. So let's start here with August through September dates. You can see we start with fairly low impression for the studio, but accounting for about 3% of those bookings with a strong booking rate. Then as we go into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you start to see a much bigger spread of the impression share. 12% for 1 goes up to about 20% for 2 and 3, kind of our highest concentration. 17% impression share for 4-bedroom rentals during that period of time, and then 11 at 5, and kind of so on as we go down. What I want to kind of draw attention to here, though, is that with that 20% of impressions, the 2 and 3 bedroom rentals are accounting for 24% and 28% respectively of all bookings during that period, and at a much higher booking rate. You do see that after 7, it is a good bit more limited though. Later in the fall, let's take a look at October through December dates. Conversion rates across the board have certainly come down a little bit comparatively to when we're in peak, which I think certainly makes a lot of sense there. But it's also really especially interesting to note that there's a big shift in the concentration where you had 2 and 3 bedrooms as a leading bedroom count in the late summer, early fall. As we get over here, it really tilts up towards 3 and 4 bedroom rentals. I would say if you're a beach marketer and you're looking to target snowbirds, include some date searches that are relevant to those bedroom counts, because that's clearly a place that you're getting some traction. If I'm being honest, I kind of found this surprising where I would have expected snowbirds are typically going to be an older traveling couple, retirees. So you would have expected maybe a 1 or 2 bedroom. I found that a 3 and 4 bedroom was actually really, really interesting. So that's it for the beach markets. We're going to shift gears over to lake market analysis, and we're back on this search demand and length of stay. Across the board, length of stay has been about a week over the next few months. It does fluctuate a little bit month to month throughout. So there's opportunity to dial in those date search links and really go after what people are looking for. You can see here August has a 6-day length of stay, 7-night length of stay for September, 5-night length of stay for October, 7 for November. It's fluctuating just a little bit, but knowing exactly what they're looking for is a great way to maximize the marketing that you're doing. The search demand itself for upcoming months in lakes is actually a little bit more concentrated than we've seen in the other markets because there's that big lake summer boom. A lot of what people have been looking for over the last 6 months has been just what's here around the corner. 23% for August, obviously 33% for this month has been really, really positive. But then we go down to 11 for September, 5 for October, 3% in November. The call out for me on this particular chart is that we do have a little bit of dip or a bump up for December. You can see here it's about 4.4% with an average length of stay of 5 nights. But I noticed something in the rates that I wanted to sort of justify. So I pulled in some data from our Google search interest. If you're not using Google Trends, I would say take a look at Google Trends. If you have questions about it, I can show you how to use it. But this is a search trend line for 2024 showing the search interest for the phrase lake vacations. And you can see we have sort of a parallel downward trend along with what we see here. But then it jumps up a bit for December and kind of stays a little higher. So it's worth taking a look at in our rates how that relates to the lake market's perception of those December dates and the fact that we will see that impression share start to climb up a good bit as we get closer. The last thing here is going to be these summer 2026 dates. Demand starting to show and inquiries are trending at about 2 days longer per stay, or 2 nights, I should say, up to 9. We'll look at it a little bit more in a second on the rates, but comparing the rate and the demand data for summer 26, it actually offers 2 really different strategies that you can use for taking advantage. So it'll just be about understanding what makes sense for your business. Move you over to nightly rates here, Amber.
Awesome. Taking a look at our nightly rates, we're seeing a big seasonal dip with August at a median rate of $358 and September dipping down to $257. This dip actually aligns perfectly with the traveler behavior and Google Trends that Britt was highlighting from 2024. By December, rates are already climbing again, showing that many of you are actually ahead of the game and anticipating this increase for holiday demand. It's worth noting here that spring 2026 rates are a little lower than fall 2025, but demand here shows there's a little bit more opportunity that we can work with. I would personally be aware of how you've handled spring rates and utilize them in marketing as those dates are approaching. For example, if you plan to increase rates as spring demand grows, start encouraging guests to lock in now at current rates. I would create urgency with messaging like book now to secure the lowest price. On the other hand, if you expect to lower rates later, consider building a little bit of cushion now so that you can offer early booking discounts without eating into your revenue later on. Now let's shift and take a look at our booking rates.
Okay, so booking rates for the lake markets. Again, we've split this up into sort of 2 time periods so we can compare how the demand shifts over time. It's really a tale of two seasons with this one. So in the August to September dates, we have a good spread from one bedroom with 13% impressions, hovering at or a little above 20% from 2 to 4, a slight drop down to 16% impression share for 5, and then kind of increasingly down at that point, six bedroom rentals with about 6% of the impressions, 3% of the bookings. But the big emphasis for me again is going to be on those 3 bedroom properties, accounting for about 40% of the bookings on 22% of impressions is really, really impressive and gives a clear line to success when doing marketing for the next 2 months, what people are looking for there. A little bit more even spread on 2, 4, and 5 with about 20%, give or take. Switching gears over to October and December, the impression share across the bedroom counts is actually essentially the same. The big exception here that's interesting to me is that with a much lower impression share for 1 bedroom properties, we do see it actually is accounting for about 5% of bookings, which is way up from the 1%. So we are starting to see those either single or couple travelers starting to sort of emerge. As we go down through the booking percentages, 2 bedroom, where we were at 22% in late summer, only accounting for about 9% of the bookings in October to December dates. 3 bedroom increasing even further up to 45%, and then 32% for 4 bedrooms. So again, we're seeing a shift towards those larger group rentals. Combined, that's 77% of all bookings are looking for 3 to 4 bedroom, and then there's still a few at 5, but that's going to be your sweet spot. The conversion rate does come down a little bit in the winter, but I think it's worth noting here for lake market managers, the conversion rate, even in these later dates where you're out of your peak season, are some of the highest conversion rates that we're seeing throughout. And so I think that's an impressive thing to hang your hat on to some degree.
Awesome. Switching over to our mountain destinations, we're seeing here they're telling a slightly different story from our lakes, with a more even spread of searches, excuse me. August is currently holding 11.6% of our searches, with guests looking for an average stay of 8 nights, a pretty solid number headed into the late summer period. As we step into September, search demand dips, but only slightly to 7.6, but the average nightly stay holding steady at 8 nights. October searches are slightly lower at 5.4, but the average length of stay is increasing slightly to 10 nights. And November holds 4.5% of our searches, with an increase to 17 nights as we head into the holiday season. Notably, 40% of search demand is for December to February, and now is a really good opportunity to offer some early booking promotions for the holiday and ski season. Taking a look at our mountain destinations nightly rates, we're seeing far more stability than we do for our beach and lake market. As you can see, in August of 2025, the median nightly rate is pacing at $293, which is a great value for guests who are looking to save. Moving into September, our rate shifts to $218, October pacing a little bit higher here at $447, and November dropping back down, but only slightly, to $335. Now, peaks throughout the holidays and leaf seasons and slope openings are always expected for these mountain markets, but outside of these periods, rates are remaining fairly competitive. And it's actually a really good sweet spot with more seasonal demand. It positions mountain destinations well for consistent revenue throughout the year, unlike the beach and lake market that relies so heavily on summer. When it comes to our booking rates for the mountain destinations, you can see here that August and September are showing 3-bedroom homes that are really high in demand. We have 23% of impressions and 33% of bookings, but they're also holding the highest rate at 5.79. You can see here that studios are actually performing better than we expected, with a strong booking rate of nearly 6%, second highest for us, suggesting there's a segment of travelers, perhaps solo couples and adventurers, who are seeking quick and affordable mountain getaways. I would recommend that managers capitalize by running cozy couple retreat promotions and offering weekend getaway specials to drive even more conversions for these units. As we're heading into the fall, October and December, you can see that our 4 bedrooms are taking the lead with 33% of bookings and the highest booking rate, coincidentally also at 5.79. While our studios are still in demand, the booking rate does drop slowly to 3.66, and our 1 bedroom units have shifted down to a 0% booking rate. This suggests that there could be less interest for smaller accommodations during the holidays and ski seasons, but as we're heading into the season, just keep an eye on it as you go through. Homes with 5 or more bedrooms are underperforming actually, with 6 to 8 bedroom homes showing no bookings at all. This data makes it clear that 3 and 4 bedroom homes are in a real sweet spot for market markets. And mid-sized homes not only are receiving the most impressions, but consistently outperforming on booking rates. So managers should ensure that these properties are front and center in our marketing. Notably, our 5 to 7 bedroom homes are accounting for 20% of the impressions. So there is a clear appetite for family reunions, group vacations, and ski trips, but the lower booking rate suggests to me that these homes aren't being showcased to their full potential. I would highly recommend marketing these larger homes around a cost per person to kind of promote their value and promoting them better for multi-family holidays. With December seeing the highest share of bookings for 4 bedroom homes, there's a clear opportunity for us to lock in those travelers well ahead of time. But there's also an opportunity to grow shoulder season bookings by positioning these mountain stays as a cooler, less crowded alternative to coastal travel. So now that we've seen that the demand is trending across all of these destinations and seasons, let's shift gears and talk about how it connects to our marketing performance. I'll hand it back over to Britt to take over for our marketing benchmarks.
Thank you, Amber. Good stuff there. And a reminder, Amber put out a lot of really good points there. If there's anything you didn't catch, we are going to distribute a replay. We'll also be putting contact information in the chat. So if you want to reach out to us or ask here, we can always review those. So now looking, like she said, we're going to switch it over to organic search. This is both our search performance for organic, but it also shows our all traffic search data. We've got that here in the green with last year and then this year, excuse me. And then we have our organic traffic. Last year's in this lighter blue, the current year in the darker blue. It's important to note the traffic did remain down year over year throughout the spring and into early summer for both. The total traffic especially is certainly down. We had in April 6,300 sessions versus almost 7,900. In May 6,500 sessions versus about 7,700 in May of 2024. And then for June 6,000 sessions, so a little bit smaller reduction there versus 8,000 for June 2024. I would monitor that all traffic number over the next couple of months, as August in the last year is where we really saw a downturn start to go, especially for the beach markets. So just kind of be aware of how your traffic is pacing and kind of anticipate that if we do follow a similar trend, we will be going down, but hopefully there's some things we can do to make the most of the traffic we are doing, and we'll look at that in just a second. One really positive takeaway that we're seeing here is that our median organic sessions are trending much closer to last year's numbers in recent months. Kind of going through this data again, we do have 2,200 sessions organic versus about 3,000, so a little bit lower in April, but we had a really nice bounce back in May. Just under 2,300 sessions, just over 2,300 sessions in May 2024. So about a 40 session gap. So that was where we started to see a little bit of push to kind of fill those summer dates at the last minute. Last minute bookings is certainly a pretty common trend right now. Going into June, about a 400 session gap, but much, much closer than our all traffic numbers. So worth noting that it is a platform that's performing really well for those who are investing in it. Continuing the trend from the Q2 Real Insights installment, these slight year-over-year decreases in organic traffic are actually being offset really nicely by a higher conversion rate. So if we switch over to this chart on the right, you can see in both cases, for all traffic and organic especially, we're outpacing last year with our conversion numbers. A high point here being for the April organic, we started at almost 0.7%, May even closer, 0.69. And if we go back to last year, we were hovering a little bit closer to 0.6%. looking at the all traffic conversion rate, starting at about 0.5%, we trended a little lower, but we actually were really close to exceeding last year's across the board, which is at least a positive sight for the fact that, switching over to median bookings here, the fact is that there is a reduction in window shoppers right now, and those higher conversion rates really prove that, and I think the booking numbers prove that, is that more people are looking to book versus looking to look. And so while we want things to trend positively for reservations and for traffic and across the board, the stat that matters the most is still kind of there based off the traffic that we have. So that's at least something positive to hang on to, and sort of a good point of navigation for where to invest in the business. You can see here that while all traffic, or excuse me, you can see here that organic bookings are actually again trending pretty closely to 2024. 15 median bookings in June versus 16, holding pretty strong. So that boon we always talk about organic organic search being for business are holding really true. The gap here is going to be in those overall bookings. We're down for all traffic. We have been all year. And I guess the important note I want to put out here is that this is something that most management companies are facing and are feeling. And so, you're not alone out there. Proactivity is ultimately what matters right now. What can you do? Get into analytics. The best thing you can do to counter the downturn is going to be getting really detail oriented and efficient so that you can juice every little bit of progress that you can with what's available in the traffic. Every business is going to be a little different. So you got to get in there with your internal teams or your, third party marketing team. Get into that data and maybe see if it's not organic, which while it's slightly lower, if it's not organic, what other channels are you seeing bigger gaps in? And see what we can do about increasing that. Direct traffic where someone's typing your URL in directly or they have it bookmarked. That may be a place where we're seeing it come down. I know for a lot of clients I've spoken to recently, the repeat guests for this year have actually been a good bit down. And so it might be a good year to really double down on engaging with those. You have their emails, segment out that audience, get creative and find a way to engage them and remind them of what a great time they had last year. And I kind of added this in last minute, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Make sure to invest in your referral partners. It's not as large of a chunk as your organic or your paid search or even social for a lot of businesses that invest in that. But referral business does contribute traffic and reservations to property management sites. If you're not currently, get involved with your local chamber, talk to local travel blogs, and see if you can have an impact by the guests that are looking at those by maybe sending hospitality related links into your site. The last thing here that I can recommend looking at kind of overall search performance is going to be conversion tools. With traffic down, the highest impact strategy you can employ is trying to make sure that what traffic you do drive to the site, you're converting at the highest level possible. Two solutions that we offer are something called booking recovery, which is essentially cart abandonment for those of you working with a different third-party marketing provider or maybe managing it yourself internally. If you don't have a cart abandonment solution, I'd highly encourage you to get one. If guests make it to the checkout page, where about 70% of sessions on the site do fall off before booking, what we're going to do is if they get to a place where the email address gets put into that email field at the top and then they abandon, you automatically are able to send them a series of 3 emails that are going to not only remind them about looking at that stay, but it'll include the travel dates, it'll include the property, we can do some dynamic messaging, and they all link directly back into the checkout page for that property. Another really, really great tool is going to be something called Send My Stay. I think this is a little bit more unique to us, but you don't have to be a website client to add it. Send My Stay is going to do something similar where if there's exit intent at the search results page or on a property detail page and someone starts to exit out of your site or exit out of those pages, we'll do a pop-up encouraging them to provide their email address so that we can, again, follow up with a 3 email series, reconnecting them to the date search they were doing or even to the property that they were starting to look at. So those are some good ways to kind of take advantage of the traffic, increase conversion. That's really been the boon recently is the conversion rate. Okay, so then let's get over to paid search. Take a quick sip of water here. What we have here in this first chart is going to be median click-through rate and our cost per click. Median click rate is going to be in green again. We've got that kind of comparison there. You can see there's a fairly large gap. And then cost per click is going to be in blue. You can see that the click-through rate has been a good bit number, the 2024 numbers, but it's going to be interesting to see how the remainder of the year trends. It's really worth noting that this dip here in the later half of the year, not extremely dramatic, but is a big part of what we see with that overall traffic dip that we were looking at earlier. On the cost per click side, we do see that the cost per click is going to go up about 50 cents towards the end of the year last year. We're going to want to monitor and see if that's happening for this season as well as we get into fall. Typically, that's going to mark that competitive nature of the snowbird for beach markets, the ski season really getting into full swing in your mountain markets. What you're going to want to do is just optimize the account as much as possible to keep ROI as high as possible, looking at things like really, really high cost per conversion keywords, things like high cost per click terms. While this is a median that does spread, and there may be opportunities where you have a high converting term that's much lower cost per click. So there's some adjustments that can be made in the marketing campaigns to try to maximize the money you're making off that campaign, net. There is one other thing that I thought was interesting in this chart, and that's this little anomaly right here around April over to June. And you can see that in 2024, Google increased the cost per click a good bit in anticipation of that spring demand surge before the peak seasons. This year's spring CPC has been much more stable than that. Excuse me, and we landed in June with actually the same cost you can see here, $1.44 to $1.44. And like I mentioned, the overall click rate has been lower, but with paid search, there's an interesting thing that happens where it kind of comes out with a major silver lining for you. And that's going to be moving over to this median ad revenue and cost. With the recent cost per click being lower, and then the clicks also being lower, it's leaving more budget for our paid search accounts for clients to actually serve more high intent users. And you can see what that's accomplishing for us is with a really, really similar spend, we've actually been able to bring in a total revenue that's a little bit higher month over month in June, or excuse me, year over year for the month of June, but also consistently throughout the year. You'll also see that impact here with your median bookings. Overall, the bookings have consistently trended a good bit higher than 2024, about 7.5 bookings median versus 6 in June. But again, kind of throughout, while it is fluctuating, it stayed well ahead. And then over here on the right, we're going to take a look at the conversion rate. You can see that 2025 is trending pretty similarly to 2024, although just last month we did have a little bit of decrease both on our booking amount and our conversion rate. And what I kind of attribute this to is going to be a few things. People are getting more competitive with those rates, especially with last minute bookings being so prevalent when we're in the season or the peak season for beach, which does make a lot of our markets or our data set here. People are going to get competitive with those rates, do last minute promotions and specials. And then I've also talked to some clients of mine, or recent clients of mine, I no longer manage clients, but clients of ours. And what I've heard is that minimum nights are coming down in a lot of markets, doing anything that we can to try to fill some dates and then worry about the gaps in between. So I think that minimum nights are certainly going to contribute to that lower median revenue per booking. There's the opportunity for someone to book something a little smaller than they have in past years. What I'm going to do here now is pass it on back over to Amber so she can tell us a little bit how to maximize these results with your paid search accounts, because there is a lot of opportunity that we're seeing through the data we just talked about.
Thanks, Britt. With more and more guests looking to save on their vacations and trying to search for better prices, there's a real opportunity to fine tune our ad messaging to better present ourselves for these guests. One of the simplest but most effective strategies that we've seen pay off is testing value-focused ad copy. I would recommend highlighting book, direct, and save or exclusive savings, both really good approaches to showcase what you're offering your guests. It's also worth thinking about splitting your campaign types by different traveler types. For those last minute bookers, focus on messaging like available now and last minute savings for fall getaways. And then on the other hand, for planners who are booking further in advance, focus on saving space copy, like plan ahead and save or book early for the best rates. Adding site links to your ads for things like special offers and direct booking perks can also increase your click-through rates. These act almost like shortcuts for our guests, making it easier for them to find savings where they're already looking. Based on how these trends are pacing, if you're not already, I would consider starting or even increasing your paid search investments. We're seeing consistent strategies from these campaigns and clear results. And with the right strategy, paid search can be one of the fastest ways to get in front of those high intent travelers. Shifting over to our email marketing. We've seen a sustained, excuse me, obviously I'm a tad nervous, positive trend in email engagement over the past few months. As we noted in our Q2 webinar, our January campaigns were incredibly successful this year, showing us that our book direct campaigns remain strong and something to keep in mind as we're planning ahead into 2026. Looking at June 2024 here compared to June of 2025, you can see that our open rate has increased by 5% and our click-through rate is up from 3 to 5. That tells us this guests aren't just seeing our campaigns, but are also engaging with them. There are a few ways that we can capitalize on this increase in engagement though. First, let's talk about segmentation. Building segmented campaigns for first-time bookers is a great way to speak directly to their needs. For this group, I would focus on promoting the value of booking direct, as we find that many travelers don't realize the perks they get when they're booking directly with your business rather than an OTA. Next, let's talk about timing and seasonality. As you can see here, last year we saw a dip in engagement during these summer months, which isn't surprising as guests are already often on vacation and not actively planning their next trip. But it actually gives us a really good window to pivot our messaging using the time that guests would be on vacation to encourage those who are looking outside of summer travel dates to plan ahead for fall. For example, a subject line could look like, why fall is the perfect time to visit X destination, or lock in your autumn travel getaway today. It can spark interest and get them thinking about their next adventure, whether on vacation with you currently or planning into the fall. And it's also really important to not forget about your repeat guests. These are some of our most valuable customers because they already know our brands and are trusting us. A simple stay again offer sent after departure can go a really, really long way here. Thank them for their stay and maybe include an incentive if they want to rebook within the next 30 days. One other trend that I've noticed with my clients over the past few months, short and concise emails are generating higher engagement rates. Focus on clear, strong copy with a strong call to action. Think concise messaging like plan your next getaway or exclusive savings just for you, and even book direct and save today because, as always, those trend really well. These kinds of focused messaging are cutting through the inbox noise and getting better results.
All right, so that wraps us up on the marketing segment here. We actually paced a little bit ahead of time, got through the data pretty quickly. Again, if there's anything maybe that you heard us talk about that we maybe went a little too fast, please do feel free to pop that in the chat or shoot us an email afterwards. Let's take a look here. I actually don't see any questions that have come through. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. I hope you got some helpful insights. I'll give another minute or two here. If anyone does want to pop any questions in, please do. Otherwise, you're free to get back to your busy days. All right, well, looks like we are about wrapped up here then. Again, thank you so much for attending. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and a good weekend coming up. And we will see you in a Q3 for another webinar. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.